our pages. I thought about putting like some smiley lips on there, yeah. I swear I put like some smiley lips or something on there. That would be good. And then I'll put
How are you tonight?
What's up, Eileen? I can give you a hug, but I can't.
I know, just virtual. Everything's virtual.
I know. Yeah. Oh, it's killing me now. No, I can't hit before I can't hug.
Great. How about you?
That's right.
James,
You know what?
it's on the.
Right.
I didn't press anything.
Yeah.
We got the presentation loaded up here.
Do we have it loaded up? Did you bring the phone?
I do have a phone.
Yeah, let's do that. James, can you make sure this presentation is ready?
Yeah.
I was about to go there like I know what I'm doing. I'm scared.
Here you go.
I'll just let you go. Oh, you got it? Perfect. Thank you. Great.
Just
I think it was Sally.
it would be
She said that's
Do they do it local? Or something smaller. Oh, about that, something like that. It's not big.
Yes, sir. How about you? Good.
Welcome, everyone, as we call the open session back to order for the May 14th, 2020 meeting of the Camden County Board of Education. I'd ask any members if there's any consideration for open session agenda changes. Seeing none, I entertain a motion to approve the open session agenda. Motion by Mr. Heath, seconded by Dr. Banks. All in favor, say aye. Opposed, motion carries. Would you please observe a moment of silence? Thank you for your consideration. Dr. Farrell, does anybody sign up for public comment? No, sir. If you would please join me in pledge of allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America, to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you. Open session to appear.
No one has requested.
Consent agenda. Motion by Mr. Heath to approve the consent agenda, seconded by Dr. Banks. Any discussion? All in favor say aye. Opposed? Motion carries. Information updates, new high school project going by Mr. Rick Ott with MUCON. We have a guest who will introduce.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I do have a guest I'd like to introduce, Ashley Dennis with Mosley Architects. Ashley, why don't you say a few words? So they can actually see your mouth moving.
Well, I'm glad to be here and excited to work with you guys on the high school. We thank you for the opportunity. And we can't wait to actually have our team show up here and shake your hands and, work closely with you as we make this project come to reality as we move through the bond process and the project. So, thank you.
Thank you, Ashley. Ashley and Ashley's firm and some of her engineers and my folks have been working during our COVID shutdown. We've all been very busy on a number of conference calls, and we have worked collectively on the estimates and things that we are going to be providing you tonight. And so I would like to get started. It's probably going to be a hard night. We've got a lot of work to do, and we have some action items that we will culminate as we get to the end. We are on a somewhat tight time schedule in order to get everything in place, meet all the legal requirements, get the public fully informed in order to have a referendum in November of 2020. And so tonight really is that first step in the development of the resolution to go to the county commissioners. And so with that, we'll get started. As I mentioned, the agenda tonight, I want to go back and just for everyone's benefit, especially members of the audience that may be watching for the first time, kind of reorient them a little bit with the original program, and then let's talk a little bit about tax impacts and estimates. So where we started, we spent a number of months meeting with teachers, admin, district administration. We got a lot of feedback, a lot of input into the program. The board spent, I guess, a lengthy several hours going through the program and that sort of thing, making some decisions. And that resulted in a total square footage of approximately 159,500 square feet. Really cutting edge educational program. And I think it was going to be a model high school for the United States, especially for rural communities. In the meantime, while that was working, the county has retained a financial firm to give them some consulting services. First try on David Cheatwood. I have absolutely enjoyed working with Mr. Cheatwood. He is a consummate professional in what he does. And so he's been very responsive to our request as well. We met back in the 1st of March with the county commission at a retreat, and they presented kind of the financial picture as they have done, I guess, for a number of years to the county. That is this document right here. It's a rather lengthy document. There's really only about 4 or 5 pages that are germane to our conversation tonight. Back up just a second. I know no one can read that. And the red outline on that is kind of my highlights. I'm just going to highlight it for the screen here. But Mr. Cheatwood ran 3 primary scenarios because, again, we didn't know how large the project was going to be at the time. We didn't know how much grant funding that may be coming forth. And so he ran a number of scenarios so we could look at the tax impact for the community. The scenario that most closely fits where we are today is scenario 3. And we were assuming a $45 million project cost, plus the issuance cost, We know we have a $12.3 million grant in hand from the state of North Carolina if the county can come up with a $5 million match for those funds, of which we would utilize bond funds with. And that would result in about a $33 million general obligation bond. Now, down below, you see I've got a second highlight there. Mr. Cheatwood used a 3.5% interest rate for the sale of these bonds, and he followed LGC's recommendations of doing 20-year bonds with level payments. That's a very conservative approach, but that's LGC's recommended approach for general obligation bonds. So they ran a number of scenarios. Again, kind of the bottom line that I think everybody's interested in is if you look under scenario 3, issuance of $33 million of GO bonds for a $45 million project at 3.5%. I have to keep saying it, at 3.5% results in about 17.3 pennies on the tax rate in order to pay for the new school. Any questions about that? And then the next page that I think's germane was page 4, and it talks a little bit about the general obligation timeline, what needs to happen, and that sort of thing. One of the most important parts of the information that I can tell you is that there are 3 readings that need to take place in order to put it on the ballot in November. And there has to be a public hearing along with those 3 readings. The first reading, it's somewhat typical to not have the numbers fully formed. Now, we're a little bit further along than what is typical because of the estimating we've done to date. But you can put a, quote, plug number in for the first and second reading. But by the third reading, you have to have the absolute number that you're going to be using in bond referendum. Now, let me give you an example. If you were to put 40 million in the first reading, and then you find out it's 45 million, well, you're out of luck. You cannot go up. But let's say you put 40 million in the first reading and you only needed to sell $35 million in bonds, you can always go down up into the third reading. The other thing that I will point out is when you ask for a bond referendum from the public, from the voters, you're asking to sell up to that amount of bonds that you put on the ballot. You don't have to sell all of those bonds. If for whatever reason the project comes in a little less, you don't have to sell those bonds. And typically, LGC wants to have either guaranteed max or bids in hand prior to the sale of those bonds. Now, all that becomes germane as we get further into the presentation, but those are a couple things as far as the timeline that I think sense.
Mr. Rod.
Yes, sir.
Just to step back a little bit. So the tax rate, have you seen any change in that with the current environment that we're in?
Interest rates? Yes, sir. I have. And you're jumping ahead.
That's fine.
I actually went to what we call the MMD, which is a municipal market data place. And they track the sale of general obligation bonds and municipals and things like that. And I have some up-to-date data as of noon today.
I'll wait.
And had a conversation with Mr. Cheatwood this morning several times about bond sales. So a couple notes that I want to point out to you. And I think this will answer Chairman Overton's question. The scenarios utilized, or the interest rates utilized in the 3 scenarios, use an interest rate of 3.5% or higher. And that's smart, you know, because you don't plan for what the day is, you plan for when you actually sell the bond. And so ultimately, about the quickest we could sell these bonds would probably be sometime in January or February. So you want to provide yourself with a little bit of cushion. Now, when Mr. Cheatwood was doing these studies, I don't think even he believed interest rates would be as low as they are today. We knew he was being very conservative, but even it surprised me at current rates. Current rates are right now 2% or less for selling municipal or general obligation bonds, 2% or less. That's incredible. I've been doing this for over 40 years, and it's the lowest bonds I've seen. I will tell you, it is pretty much general consensus, given the amount of stimulus that the feds have put out there, that we're going to see rates rise, and probably rise fairly dramatically over the next 2 to 3 years. I think that's pretty much everyone assumes that. For every point that interest rates go up, for example, if they go from 3% to 4%, that costs about $3.8 million in added interest that has to be paid back. So right now, you're at an extremely low rate, but if rates go up, for example, if you delay the project 2, 3, 4 years, rates go up, you have to pay back $3.8 million for every percent or every 1 point that rates go up. Inversely, for every point that goes down under the 3.5% that Mr. Cheatwood used in his scenarios, we save $3.8 million. That's interest that the taxpayer did not have to pay back. You don't get one additional classroom nor one additional brick for paying back interest. $3.8 million that we don't have to pay back would save approximately 3.6 cents the first year. Now it would decline because of the level of principal payments that we're making, but by year 10, it would be down to 1.8. So you can see, because of the benefit of low interest rates, we're going to get some pretty significant reductions in the tax impact in order to build a new high school. And by the way, this is a high school update, but don't forget, the new high school impacts every other school in the district. Every student will benefit from construction of the new high school, because we'll be building growth and we'll be able to offload some of these overly crowded schools. Now, I checked again today, Mr. Overton, with the MMD. AAA bonds, 20-year bonds, selling at 1.7%. That's pretty good. Insured bonds were selling at 2%. They were down from earlier this week, so they're still going down. One of my clients sold a $29.5 million bond issuance on Tuesday, 15-year bonds at 1.2%. That's pretty good. So you can see that that's a pretty substantial discount from the amount that we're using for our modeling purposes here. And we won't really know what that is until we get a little closer to the bond referendum date. And we want to be honest with the voters and tell them what that tax impact would be. But right now, we can only plan for what we know, and if we get a little closer, we'll be keeping the public updated on that accurate tax impact data. But what I can tell is it's not going to get much better than it is today. That's for sure. So, having that in mind, and again, you know, I think in one of the earlier meetings, and at least with the county commissioners, I told them that it was my intent to be very miserly with the taxpayers' money as we go through this project. And so I wanted to give the board options on what this project might look like. And really, after reviewing the tax impact data, I felt like our original plan for approximately 159,000 square feet might be out of that window of affordability. We've got quite a bit of money that we're having to tie up into the development of the site, because one, it is a very large site, which is good. And secondly, it's going to require some undercutting and hauling in some fill. So there's not much we can do with the site issue. But there were some things that we could do with the building issue. And so I went through and made a list of reductions with Mosley Architects and with Dr. Farrell. And we did a first pass where we reduced the size of the building approximately 18,860 square feet. Now, I went through this for Dr. Farrell, and I kept watching him. I was sitting closer to the door. And Dr. Farrell didn't get too upset. I give him credit for that. And at the end, I asked him, what did you think, Dr. Farrell? And he said, well, there's nothing in here that I saw that I couldn't live with. He said, the great thing is we have left our educational program intact. And that's true. We did a lot of nibbling at the edges. And, you know, some small places here, there, to get that 18,000 square foot reduction. So my folks ran an estimate based on that 140,000 square feet approximately. And the building cost is, and these are approximate numbers, of course, because we're working on conceptual numbers, approximately $37.5 million. Site development at $4 million. We have an athletics allowance, and these are the fields, stands, the grading, lighting, those kind of things at $2.5 million. Total construction cost of $43,953,000 with the technical cost of 7.7. And those are things like technology, furnishings, testing, fees, and contingency, owner contingencies. So total project cost based on 140,000 square feet is approximately 51,716,000 square feet. There will need to be some off-site improvements done to the roadway. We estimated those at about $840,000. That is outside of the project cost because typically that is reimbursable from the state to do this work. So even though we're showing you an estimate for the cost, we're not including them there. So some of the reductions that we did, and I have provided the board with a sheet, and the sheet looks like this, that details those reductions. And for purposes of this presentation tonight, I won't get into the real details of it, and just kind of hit the highlights. With the learning centers, we reduced some of the classroom size to about 50 square feet. We removed one science lab, went from 4 to 3 labs. Again, reduced some areas in the early college, small areas. Again, some small modifications in the central admin and visitor center. Fine arts, we reduced the theater. You know, we had a lot of conversation about 300 seats, 400 seats, that sort of thing. We reduced it down to 400 seats, removed the orchestra pit. Music, we slightly reduced some of the band rooms and ensemble rooms. Media center, we reduced that down a little bit, not significantly. The gymnasium, we again reduced the gym size a little bit, still have the 1,200 seats that we talked about. Ashley's firm thinks they can be a little more efficient in the space. We did remove the auxiliary gym and brought that in as an add alternate. Hated to do that. And then reduce some of the other areas a little bit, reduce the kitchen size just a little bit. And ended up with 130,263 square feet. Now I'll tell you, the last 10,000 square feet after the pass hurt my feelings. Ashley here might look like a kind person, but she's brutal. And she knew we were trying to get to a target, and she actually made me cry a time or two. So some of those reductions were a little bit painful, I don't mind telling you. But we were trying to get down to a target that we think was within the ability of the taxpayers here and that they think it will be a good value. The two biggest issues is that we would carry the auditorium, increase it by 200 seats as an add alternate. If we're getting favorable construction costs when we start bidding it out, we can add that back in. And the auxiliary gym, again, that's something that we can add back in if we got really favorable costs. We are down to less than $250 a square foot for the school itself. So we were coming in pretty low anyway. So if we look at the 130,000 square feet, where does that bring us estimate-wise? The building cost approximately $34,742,000. The site development is what it is until we get more engineering documents and get some bids in hand. We've got an estimate of around $4 million for that. Athletics, again, we set aside $2.5 million. Total construction costs, $41,242,000. Technical cost, $7,386,000. For total project cost of $48,628,000. And again, we would carry the auditorium, the additional 200 seats. We have a 400 seat, but we will have an additional 200 seat add alternate, and the auxiliary gym as add alternate.
Then just to get the seats back, or also the orchestra pit and all that? Is that all?
Some of it is, it's really smaller numbers, and because of the delivery method that you chose, we will be very flexible in being able to add these spaces back. And so we do a lot of design build projects together. And so once we get started and get cut loose and we start getting some actual numbers on supplies and materials. The COVID-19 issue, we really not sure where construction cost is going short term. We are hoping that it might go down a little bit. So if we hit the market just right, towards the end of this year, we may get some favorable pricing and we'll be able to add that back. We're keeping the core and the number of classrooms intact though, as far as being able to house the students. Any additional questions on the estimates for the program?
Have you got any soil boring results back from the county yet on that site?
No, sir, we have not. I do know that it's been out there. We put together a proposal for that. We're using Timmons Engineering, civil engineer. They're very, very familiar with the sites we have. We do have subsurface information on several sites that's close proximity to the site. We are using that as a basis, and also based on Timmons' experience. We probably had, a 2-hour meeting one day talking about the estimates, what's required. We were going to have to undercut probably about 2 feet of dirt and then haul in new dirt under the building pad. And we'll probably have to do some of that under the play fields as well. And that really is the big driver for the increased site development cost. And it's a 60-acre site. I mean, it's a big site. But again, we start site work first. And if we're able to save $500,000 or $800,000 on site work, that's money we will be able to apply those savings to the building and add back some of these other items. So we'll be kind of doing a rolling process, and as monies are available, we can add back these spaces. So that brings us really back to talking a little bit about the resolution tonight. And Yvonne, everybody's kind of looked at the issue around COVID-19 for the last 6 weeks, and we're all really kind of looking through that window of the last 2 months. But as we look at buildings and capital projects, we really need to be thinking a year down the road, or 2 years, or 3 years, and in this case, 20 years down the road. What might look like a little scary today or concerning today may look very different in the fall. And so there's some information that I think really is pertinent for the board and for the commissioners, and mostly for the taxpayers. Mostly for the taxpayers. I mentioned this earlier, for every 1 point that interest rates go up from where they are today, adds $3.8 million of interest that we have to pay back. It goes up 2 points, which would basically take it back to where Mr. Cheatwood has used in his modeling. That adds $7.6 million that would have to be repaid. That's important. If you look at construction inflation, and you folks have been looking at this high school for quite some time now, you've had estimates over the years, and you've seen those estimates go up, up, up. And, you know, one thing I can tell you, it's like the sun coming up tomorrow. Construction cost escalates every year. Right now, we're using a conservative 4 to 6% annual inflation rate. Let's use the lower of the two, 4%. A 2-year delay would add $4 million to the cost of this project, and a 5-year delay would add $10.5 million to the cost of the project. You're not getting any more classrooms. That's just inflation. And then, of course, you add the double whammy. I've always wanted to use the term double whammy in a presentation for the last 30 years. I finally got my option to do it tonight. The double whammy is you would be paying higher interest rates on a higher construction cost, so the tax impact with getting nothing else, not adding one more bit of value to the taxpayers and to the school district, would be between a $12 and $15 million increase in the total payback to the taxpayers. So now truly is the right time to do this project, given the interest rates that we have with us today. So historically low interest rates. Most importantly, we have in hand $12.3 million of state grant money. We can only bring that grant money down if the county is willing to put up $5 million in matching grants. So if we don't pass the bond referendum and we wanted to even take down the grant money, we would still have to raise taxes in order to get the $5 million to take the state grant money. But that's only half the scope. That's not enough to do what you need to do. And so really a bond referendum is the only way we're going to be able to get that $12.3 million. Now, if we were to delay the project, you would basically eat up all of that grant money just in inflation and higher interest rates. So again, that's more evidence for now is the time. Now is the time. Reduce project cost, and I'll tell you one of the things that I'm really looking forward to is creating 100 new construction jobs for a 2-year period for this project. That's jobs that would largely go to Camden County residents. Those would be good paying construction jobs. That in itself would be a real economic shot in the arm for Camden County. So can I answer any questions about estimates, programs, tax impact?
The 20-year options, the only option on the table?
No, sir, there are, the reason we have focused on 20-year options is because that's what the local government commission in North Carolina recommends. And ultimately, we've got to make application to the LGC in order to do the bond and sell the bonds. Now, I will tell you, given the spread that I am seeing in 15 and 20-year bonds, that spread might be just that much, and it might be as economical to do even less in time. The 30-year spread was about, I want to say, roughly 0.25% more on interest rates when I looked at it today than the 20-year. So again, still unimaginably low interest rates to sell these bonds right now. So I think given a favorable vote by the voters, what we want to do is get to the bond market as absolutely as quick as we can and take advantage of these low rates.
But if we get the better rates that they're at now and at 30 years, that could bring that 17 cent, like I got 8, 9.
It would, but ultimately we'd be paying a little more interest for a longer period of time. And so what we want to do is look at the overall tax impact.
We being the citizens of Camden County, if you live
Right.
here from 20, 21, 30 years.
Right.
And you live, now, not every member of Camden County will be here 30 years from now.
All right.
You
Well, I
look at it
think,
from the public standpoint.
well, I think what the appropriate thing would be is tonight, we need to set the budget that for the project. And then we need to get Mr. Cheatwood to run several scenarios based on various terms, based on that actual number. Because I can interpolate from his numbers, and we can run our own numbers, but the man that speaks for the county, or for the county, is Mr. Cheatwood. And he's the one that's advising on these tax issues, and from what I've seen so far, he's done a pretty good job. And so what I would want to do is let's set the number tonight, and then let's let Mr. Cheatwood run those financial models. And then as we get further along in first, second, third reading, we can refine those numbers and that bond set.
So the terms can come after the bond has been passed.
Yes, sir, but the amount has to stay the same.
That's what we have to decide.
That's correct, sir.
And the size, this, the 130 square foot, how many, is that will hold 800 students?
Yes, sir, that's core facilities for 800, and that also accommodates the 600 students plus early child, or early college.
So if you got 800, it can hold, incorporate early college.
Yes, sir.
That's all.
Yes, sir. There are 3 learning centers that we have, and then we have early college, which is really kind of its own separate little area here. Also, we're going to have a little bit of space available to grow. And one of the things I want to emphasize is that we are going to be designing the project such that, you know, in 30 years, if you need another 300 students or add there, then you can, you know, add on another learning center.
Brings in my question, the space reductions, but technology appears to be about the same amount of money, FFE, everything else should be the same. We're still talking about the high school that's going to serve us well and functionally for at least 40 years. That's what we originally set out.
At least 60 years.
Okay.
The facility we're building for you, and I look, Larry does a good job maintaining. I'm not sure he will be around to maintain it 50 years, but if he does, it'll last you well into 60 years. And that's really one of the benefits of building a new facility. I think it will lower your overall maintenance costs for the district right now.
And how quick after a bond referendum were to pass, can we get bonds to market typically?
What LGC is going to want to see is either a guaranteed maximum price from us or bids in hand. And so I will tell you, Ashley and myself, we've already kind of started laying out on the site and what this might look like. We've both got some general ideas. Larry shared some information on finishes, mechanical systems, and that sort of thing. So we've kind of got the thought in process. Once we know that we've got a successful bond referendum, which I feel pretty certain we're going to have, then we can immediately get started. The civil work will be the first out of the gate. We would want to start that civil work probably in February, take advantage of the spring, and we expect to have a building pad ready to go in June and start the actual construction of the building. We will have bids in hand well prior to that. So typically we see our lowest rates in February of each year. And so we want to try to hit that late January, February mark. And the conversation I had with Mr. Cheatwood today, he said, if you chance, we're talking about another project, you get me a GMP on in August. And I said, whatever it takes, we'll get it. So. Other questions? So the two action items that we have tonight is establishing a bond referendum amount, for at least our first reading, and a date which would be in the form of a resolution to the county commissioners formally requesting that they place this issue on the ballot. So I've run the numbers for you.
And the numbers, like contingency is built in,
Yes, sir.
4%.
We have a 5% owner contingency built in.
That's probably about normal for a project this size.
Normal would be about 10%. I feel confident in our numbers, and remember, we are guaranteeing those numbers. And also any monies that are saved under those numbers, when we have actual numbers, the county retains 100% of those savings. So again, I'm very hopeful that we're going to be able to add back some of these space reductions that we've got in place. And we will prioritize that as we get more into the design and that sort of thing. But right now, our mission really is to set a budget that we're going to put on the ballot. And, you know, if we go back a little bit and we look at our estimate based on the 130,000 square feet, I will point out that, I'll walk over here, Ms. Alita, is that this is not the bond amount that we're going to be asking for, because we need to reduce this amount by $12.3 million. I would also say that the state had in mind providing another $11 million or so for Camden County in its budget. And we understand that the budgeting process has been delayed and that sort of thing. But if that 11 million or 10 million or 15 million would have to come to pass, it would reduce the amount of bonds that we sold. Key item. So let's say right now we're at what, roughly $36 million in bonds that we would sell with the 12.3 in hand. So if in fact the state did come through with some money, we would only sell the amount of bonds that we would need, which in this case would be maybe 23, 24 million. Even though the public may have approved us for selling additional bonds. And I'm very hopeful that that's going to happen.
Like I said, whatever number we pick, you can't go down. I mean, up, you can't go up.
As we can do
Yes,
that.
We can go down, we can't go up.
You can go down, but you can't go up.
We need to. If we go with this number, we have to be really confident. We say 49 million, I guess, that's.
Again, you want to, we want to be reasonable, and that's one of the reasons that, you know, we went from that 140,000 square feet. We'd already taken those reductions. I felt like I really needed to give the board some more options. And again, if you start looking at the ability to pay and that sort of thing, the number of pennies that we would add on there, I think a project under that $50 million range is reasonable. At that, you know, you might ask for $49 million in bonds, at least through the first reading. And then if we can refine it a little bit more, you know, we can go down, we can make it 48.5.
Like you said, we got that grant. If we decided tonight we'll get 49 million, we need to take 12.3 off. That's the bottom.
That's correct. That's what the bond amount would be. And so in order to do that, we have to, in effect, set the budget right now, and then we'll subtract the 12.3 off, which would, you know, give us the amount that the referendum would be set for. Again, that's up to that amount.
But in order to sell this to the taxpayers, us, they're going to ask, what's my tax income? So So playing with that term, that is clearly something that we can use later on to reduce the tax impact, to say this is the amount of tax increase.
That's correct. That's correct. And again, if something happens in, let's say, September, October, the state comes through with some additional funds, the federal government sends some more money down. Apparently, they got plenty of it up there. They've been printing it. Of course, they're issuing bonds at roughly 0%. So, you know, that's pretty cheap money. We could reduce the number that we would actually sell, even though the bond referendum amount would have been set the end of July or early August. We could just, you could, you know, pledge that you would limit the amount of bond sale based on the reduction of any state monies that might be coming in. And the state monies could actually come in 2021. And that would still, we could use that to repay bonds, or we could use that to lower the amount of bonds if we hadn't already sold bonds. What I do need to do for you, though, in order to have accurate and bulletproof information on tax impact, is to have Mr. Cheapwood run actual scenarios that we will provide to the commissioners and to you folks, and ultimately to the public, so they can see what it is. But what I would tell, and frankly everyone else, is that it's not going to look any better in 2 years. In fact, it could potentially look far worse in 2 years or 5 years. And a lot of that is tied to these low interest rates that we have right now.
And it's like to see other scenarios, right, instead of just a 20-year worst case scenario. Nice to see what the others could look like.
Right.
Even though they're not guaranteed.
Well, what I'd like to have Mr. Cheatwood do is run some scenarios based on current rates.
Yeah, I would like to see that.
And so you can see what that looks like. We might hedge our bet a little bit and add 0.5%, but still, I would like to see some scenarios run on current rates.
Yeah, I'd like to see the 20-year current. I'd like to see 30 or a different term, but current rate too.
We-
As a taxpayer, not to
Right.
say,
Right. We have to, you know, argue a little bit with LGC about that, but again, rates are so low right now, I just can't see.
They just like the standard way that run through the LBC, so just like borrowing from USDA. It's getting up. I know with last school, we built here with borrowed from USDA.
Yeah, the problem with USDA is they run at 4-year terms. And
They do 20, 30.
yeah, you can. Depends on the interest rates and that sort of thing. And that's,
Really low right now.
and that's an option.
That works by 1%.
Right.
What we got.
Yeah.
That was 30.
We can, you know, again, we can ask Mr. Cheatwood to do that and see what those terms are. I have not seen any 20-year bonds through USDA or 20-year loans. I think the lowest number of years I've seen is 35. But most of them are established around a 40-year term. I don't know what the payoff is. I can, you know, have that conversation with Mr. Cheatwood, or, you know, if Mr. Bowman wants to get Mr. Cheatwood back over here and maybe have a joint session to talk about that, we certainly can do that. But again, it all starts with, you know, really, let's set the project budget amount that we think we will be able to deliver on the promise of a visionary educational high school for this county. And, but yet still keep in mind that we want to be miserly with the taxpayers' money.
Okay. Gentlemen, take that number, just call 49. Or 49.3, since we got 12.3, so I get the bottom and either 37.
I was even gonna say around 50. If we get a top number, we can always come down.
And then you come down to speak, yeah, that's what I was thinking. By going to 49, 49.3, yeah, 50.
And
Or
that's
if they don't want to see 50, 49, 999.
Well, I'll tell you,
I'm thinking about it, let's say 50.
just to kind of give you me give you a number to kind of work from here. Mr. Chief was report. For every additional 5 million that you borrow, and that's based on 3.5% interest, it adds about 3.8 cents to the tax roll. So that's 5 million increments of 3.5%. Again, you're selling bonds 2%. That tax impact is significantly less than 3.8. Your 49.3, which really kind of takes you to a $37 million number. That's probably a good number. I know we can certainly build you a very nice high school. And I think once Mr. Cheapwood runs the numbers, I think it would be affordable for the taxpayers as well, especially if we can get some additional
School board interventions already. Just to factor that in.
Well, maybe we can have Mr. Cheapwood, Mr. Bowman, see if
Bowman and I are texting, and he said that he could have Mr. Cheapwood attend that meeting.
So if I calculated right, if we would do the 49, that would roughly add 2 cents.
probably
At the current rate.
at 3.5%. It's probably gonna be less than that when you actually look at current numbers.
Correct. So we got to have a number to talk about.
Exactly. Exactly.
I think that would put us in worst case scenario.
Gives a little bit more cushion.
Yeah, that's what I said.
If a 1 point reduction in interest rate yields the 3.8 million that they're saying over total interest for the life of the loan, my calculations take 3.5 down to 2.5 for total interest puts us at less money than his projected scenario 1 is right between scenario 1 and 2 until the money expended.
Well, the problem with his level 1 is because you have to look at the amount of bonds that he's selling.
Right, I'm talking just the interest rate itself.
Oh, yes, interest rate.
Same amount of interest on that.
Right.
By reducing it down. And when you add that back into the 37 million, I'm around 41-ish, which puts us squarely between scenario 2 and 3. So if you're looking on his numbers, you're talking 13.5 to 17, according to his financials. The triangle, right? Not Mr. Hodge, according to the teacher.
Oh, the 3.8 on interest, or those numbers come from my firm. And again, that we're using actual level loan payments in the same calculation that Mr. Cheapwood did. Right. But I think the appropriate thing to do is let's, set a project budget and we'll have Mr. Cheapwood run the numbers and then you can look at actual numbers. The other item on our action item that we need to think about, and it is part of it, is the date. When would you like to have this referendum? Again, I would make a very strong case that you consider it in November 2020. And even given the uncertainty that we have economically, which I believe it's short term, I do think the uncertainty and the risk of delaying it is far greater and could be really substantial with increasing interest rates and construction inflation. So we need to set a budget and a date, and then that would formalize the resolution that would go to the commissioners requesting whatever amount and date that the board chooses.
And just a question, if the board needed a little more time to process this, would it work for them to set that budget, have those scenarios to consider, and choose a date and adopt the resolution at the May 28th joint meeting?
They could do that.
And we would still be okay timeline-wise?
You would
I just
still,
know that this is a lot of information to take in
It
and
is.
process.
you could do that at the May 28th meeting. I would tell you, I don't think you can push it much further than that.
Right.
If you're going in November, I just don't think you could push it much further than that.
So, and what that would look like is, and of course it is the decision of the board. I'm just thinking if they made those decisions at the May 28th meeting, adopted the resolution, Mr. Cheatwood was there, and everyone's in the same room, that would or would not still be time to get it to the commissioners in time for their June 1st, I believe it's June. Is that their next?
I believe that's an accurate statement.
I think it's June
I
1st.
do know that, Mr. Bowman has.
In that email, Dr. Farrell, we got from, the county, it said it needs to be on their agenda. They have to have it by the 28th of May, the 26th, sorry. So that would not work. According to the email he sent up, about their agenda time.
Gotcha.
I'm tonight.
Okay, and I'm just throwing that out there as something to think about. As I said, it's the decision of the board.
Oops.
Most we can guarantee it's going to 30 years.
I think it's like 48.
We can see it 48, to be honest with you, for 20 years. I just don't think it's gonna go, but
I'm saying you know the number is different from that.
Yeah.
48.6, 49.3, 4%. The term, it's just another term, not the amount. And that's,
we don't go with 49.
you know, maybe you know that.
They're gonna have to figure something out.
Use that little bit. Remember, we can't go up. I'm worried about that score. I'm just, we don't got a score board. That 4 can turn into 6. Worst case, after we get trash.
I think you built some pretty good cushion in the site work.
I hope so.
I hope so.
If I didn't, my boss is not gonna like me there.
In your, I'm a conservation, I'm sorry. I mean, I understand what Kevin's saying. It's unknown without actual borings, but soil surveys and
We have really,
comparable areas.
we have information that was based on actual cost. My estimators have done a really good job. We have actual cost information from 2 of the largest grading contractors in the area. I'm pretty confident that we're gonna be within $150,000 of what the bids will be on this site work. A large part of that, I have to tell you, is depending on market conditions at the time we put this project out. We keep hearing, conversations about a large infrastructure package coming out of Washington DC. And that large infrastructure package, I think, would have upward pressure on prices, construction prices. So we want to get to the market sooner rather than later. Again, another reason for putting this on the ballot in November 2020.
But with the site, you still have to estimate the amount of cut and fill. Like if the soil boards came back worse, the cut could be.
Let's see, I actually,
That's the other hand, we don't know how good or bad the soil is.
yeah, but we do know what we've got in Camden County.
Yeah.
And most, just about any site that you find, there's gonna have to be some undercutting and there's gonna have to be fill brought in.
Yeah.
That's just the nature of the beast if you wanna live in heaven or in paradise, you You're just gonna have to put up a little extra site work.
It's something for the top end of the budget. You don't get some.
Top end would be option one, 50.
Well, we've got to give him a top end budget number tonight.
Yeah.
If we're not going over. I'm saying that's what I'm good setting at 49.3. I'm just not sure if the terms don't change. It's going to take. I don't know.
I mean, that's those we do, really. I mean, those will stay right on the number, but that's not gonna make any difference in that.
No, that's.
I would like to give us a little some cushion, especially if we're compromising all the way down to this versus what we originally did. You know, there is a lot of unknowns. There we go. Well, not a lot, I mean, mainly the soul. I'm confident, we're confident.
Well, just to give you kind of a rough number, we're looking at hauling in approximately 110,000 cubic yards of dirt. That's hauling in. We're probably gonna have to haul all some dirt, but most of it we'll try to use on site and berms and things like that. So
Reburns.
berms. I mean, the problem is I can't even, if it's the typical Camden County dirt that we run into, you know, I can't put play fields on because you've got to have a good base even for play fields.
We can continue discussion and leave it open for discussion, but I'll just remind that we do need a official motion.
I'll make a motion for budget 49.3 million, November 2020. Ballot, first reading.
Motion by Mr. Heath for a $49.3 million budget for the project with a November 2020 bond referendum. Seconded by Ms. Ablett. Is there any further discussion? All in favor say aye. Opposed? Motion passes unanimously.
I don't know, you need to read the resolution.
That's what I was just asking the board's attorney.
You could approve the resolution by reference to it, but I still think it's important to read
The statement
language.
involved. So the language in bold reads, resolution requesting the Board of Commissioners for the County of Camden, North Carolina to provide necessary funds for the purpose of paying the cost of school facilities. And that refers back to action item or action agenda A. The resolution request of commissioners.
I suggest that what happened here is that you have a motion to approve the resolution with that figure. So that's what you present. That's what gets approved and presented to the board of commissioners.
Right, because that figure is the estimated cost of the project is approximately 49.3 million. That goes in there, right?
Actually, it's the amount that you want to sell bonds for, I think. So,
37 million.
The estimated aggregate cost of the project.
yeah, ultimately, you would subtract the grant money out, and I'm assuming that grant money may flow through the commission.
Yes.
I don't know. So in that case, you would put the 49.3, and part of that would be offset by that, and so the bond referendum would be set at the $37 million amount. Might take a little wordsmithing on the part of your attorney to get that just right. One last thought before I leave and let you get on to other business. I did want to mention that the budget that we have set is an all-inclusive budget. That covers everything from the furniture and computers and technology and landscaping. all the way through site development, building costs. So that will be your budget for the project.
Any other questions or comments for Mr. Ott?
No, thank you. Thank you guys.
One more. Mr. Ott or Dr. Farrell could answer this. With Mr. Chieflet, if he is able to come to our joint meeting, is he available to provide us with comparison of his proposals versus USDA?
I think he would be.
He should.
We all work on bond referendums and USDA and all that and that sort of thing. And certainly he could do that.
That'd be great.
Thank you.
Folks, it's been a pleasure, and I know it's been hard work, and I know I said Ashley was mean to me, but she wasn't that mean. She's definitely no mean to Dr. Farrell, so
She doesn't look mean.
don't let her fool you.
Don't confuse tough with me,
That's exactly
right?
Y'all have a great night,
You
folks.
too.
Thank you very
Thank you,
much.
guys. Thank you.
I appreciate it. My pleasure.
Thank you for coming.
Again, I think the board should take action to approve the resolution in specific figure. And the specific figure is based on the estimated aggregate cost of the project, that's 38 million.
No, that's the question is that the 49 million?
What did he say?
Or is that the 37 once you subtract it out?
Estimated aggregate cost of the project.
The aggregate would be the 49.3.
That's what I,
We're not asking for bonds at 49.3. We're asking them to agree to pay 49.3, 12.3 of it's from the state.
The amount of bond you receive would be 37, but the aggregate cost would be 49.3.
Yeah.
so do you add and this document came directly from the bond council.
Right. What I'm saying is you give approval, and it needs a figure, and so you need to decide on the figure. I think we agreed on the total cost of the 49.3 million. If that's the same thing as I don't know what the estimated aggregate cost means. I mean, that sounds like that's the total ticket and what will be spent over the life of the project and the repayment for it. If that's what the 49.3 is, then that should be put into that line there.
And we said we go down, we can't go up, so that's not right.
Yeah, it's not being higher,
Yeah.
right?
49.3. All right, with our
But you're talking
meeting,
that somebody should make a motion with the numbers in it.
Yes.
Yeah.
To approve, the motion should be to approve the resolution presented by the superintendent with the estimated aggregate cost of the project being approximately 49.
49.
Yeah, because the definition of an aggregate cost is the total cost involved with manufacturing a product, providing a service, or carrying out a project.
Carrying out a project. See, I still don't know if that's not just the project cost or the cost. Consider the finance.
Project cost, the total cost.
Yeah.
Where the funds come from is.
I think if you use 49.3, like you said, it's covered. It's not going to be higher.
It's not gonna be higher than that. It could only go lower, which we're allowed to
Which
do.
you're allowed to do.
Okay.
One other unknown would be whether the county commissioners are going to decide to put that matching $5 million in there, or also use bonds to finance that match.
Well, I certainly do not want to speak for our county commissioners, but I believe the plan was to make the match part of the bond referendum.
That's what I would
they have to guess. They didn't.
Yeah.
No, they feel like it. I think. Last time I looked.
So then the rest, so who made the motion or has the motion been
Now,
made? Okay. All right.
You do it again. Right.
one more
So
time,
the motion now would be to approve the resolution. That's right.
presented
Presented by the superintendent.
with the estimated
Or
aggregate
some,
cost of the project. That's
49.3.
approximately 49.3 million.
With the date of November 20.
Yes, I make the motion that John Lady just said.
Second.
Okay, there you go.
I'm sorry, I didn't get the date.
It doesn't have a date.
Oh, did I don't
There's no
know?
resolution.
The resolution is just for the dollar amount.
Okay.
Yeah, Mr. Bowden just confirmed that the match is part of what the county will bond.
So Ms. Allen has made a motion to accept the resolution as presented by Dr. Farrell with a aggregate total of $49.3 million. Construction cost. Is there a second?
That's it.
Seconded by Mr. Heath. Is there any further discussion? All in favor say aye. Opposed? Motion carries unanimous. Motion by
I know, with everyone.
Any further discussion on the high school project before we leave it? Seeing none, Dr. Farrell is going to discuss some school calendars.
So Ms. Lane and I are going to tag team this. And we might have some input from the board's attorney on it as well. Do you want to start or do you want me to start?
I can go.
Okay.
Okay, based on the legislation that we received from the General Assembly, the modifications that we have to make to our calendar is as follows. The student start date has to be August 17th, 2020. So that's the first day for students to report back to school. The closing date can be no later than June the 11th. So we have to stay within the parameter as far as the back end of that is concerned. The next thing you have to consider is that we have to stay within the 215 contract days for a teacher. So our closing date for this calendar will be June the 4th of 2021, excuse me. There's an addition of 5 full instruction days that have to be designated within the calendar. These cannot be counted as hours. It has to be 5 full instruction days. We've designated August 17 through August 21 as the 5 full instruction days, which are the days that are being bumped into the calendar, plus we already had 2 others. So in order to do that, we went through the calendar and we changed a mandatory work day, October 9th, to a full instruction day. March 19th, utility day, is now a full instruction day. May 7th, utility day, is now a full instruction day. And then we added June 3 and 4 to the end of the calendar. Also, we have to have 5 remote learning days designated in the calendar. And this is the part where I'm hoping Mr. Lighty can help us to make sure I'm on the right track. It says that you can put those remote instruction days on teacher work days. So what we've done is taken the October 12th, January 25th, February 15th, March 26th, and April 2nd optional teacher work days and made those into, well, the March 26th is mandatory work day, made those into remote teaching days. And the reason why we've done that is it's according to what I read, and according to what we've discussed, Mr. Berry and Dr. Farrell and I discussed it. It sounds like the teachers do not have to physically work that day. They can have their remote instruction set up ahead of time so that that day can still be used as an annual leave day. And I hope that's the way that it was meant. That's what it sounds like in the law to me, because it said in the passage that the remote learning days could be set up on teacher work days. We added an optional teacher work day on January the 19th because that's when our new semester change is. And we moved a mandatory work day from March the 22nd to March 26th to coincide with the end of the 3rd quarter. So we end up with 182 days and 67,342 hours divided by 60 minutes. So we've got 1,122 instructional hours now. in our calendar. And then we have to take out 28 hours for our early release days, so a total of 1,094 total hours of instruction is in our calendar for the next year. So that more than suffices for the 1,025 hours plus the additional 5 instruction days. So if you look at 5 instruction days at 6 hours a day, that would be 30 hours. So we would have to have essentially 1,055 hours, I think, would be required, and we're at 1,094 hours. So we've got plenty of time to have all this fit in.
Lane, question, did you say the 5 remote learning days were gonna be placed on, were they mandatory teacher work days or?
One is a mandatory.
One is mandatory.
Yes.
So the others
The
are
rest of them are optional. The March 26th was a mandatory teacher work day.
And the only thing that I would add is there is quite a bit of discussion out there about trading out the days, the 5 remote days that we are required to add in the calendar. Should we have an inclement weather day and
Right.
make that
Right.
the remote learning day, which would then in turn, say, turn April 2nd back into a optional teacher work day and whatever the other dates are, starting at the end and working our way back.
The advantage to that is nobody has to make up time. Teachers don't make up time, students don't make up time, we're all good. I like it.
You like it, we like it.
Ma'am?
You like it, we like it.
So we're really giving that to you tonight as an information update. And also, obviously, I know that Mr. Lighting and some folks have been working on it. We will need to bring a change, an official request to change the calendar back to you in June. But we didn't want to rush it because we're really just getting it and they're still, massaging them a little bit to figure out exactly what it means. And so, but just to kind of put it out there tonight, the one thing we do feel like we need to do, because that is pretty black and white, we do need to go ahead and announce to our community and our families that August 17th is when school will start, because if people will have vacations planned for the week leading up to school starting back and that kind of thing, we want to give them an option to be able to change that should they choose to do that.
And that's an absolute non-negotiable, so
That's
it's
a
not.
non-negotiable anyway.
Right.
Is
So
that the early days they were talking about to help kind of springboard kids back into it? Is that why they're pushing it so far
I
forward?
think so, yes.
that's what
Right.
That's what I heard.
Is early college gonna have that too, or not?
Our early college is actually exempt. Well,
Yeah.
it's not, the word is not exempt. Hang on just a second. Let me find it and read it to you. While section 2.11B2 does not explicitly exempt cooperative innovative high schools or restart schools from requirements, when read in harmony with other applicable sections of SB 704 and existing state law, the analysis is that the requirement prohibitions above do not apply to cooperative innovative high schools or restart schools.
That's lawyer written well.
So what,
Doesn't apply, it doesn't apply.
so with the
It doesn't apply unless it doesn't.
with the early college, the only thing we had to switch was we had to add the 19th in because of the semester change. The internal part of the calendar has to remain the same for bus routes and that sort of thing. So we moved the 22nd to the 26th. We took out the no days, and we took we added the 19th, the day after the end of the first semester.
because we do still have to add the remote learning days to the early college calendar.
Not that it's not my understanding that we do.
You have to, you don't have to.
If you want to, then.
No, I think you have to. Yeah.
That thing's good.
I'm not sure. Okay, I could be, I just don't know.
Did they give specific guidance on what the purpose of having to inject 5 remote learning days is?
The whole
No.
idea is to give 10
Trying to build in.
10 extra days of
Yeah. We're
instruction to
building
make
the
up
10
for
extra
the
days of
3
instruction.
months that we missed.
Just 5 extras and 5 more.
Right.
Sounds so bad. Well, and so that is exactly why we need to, have a little time to get into this, really get a little deeper into this. But I wanted you all to know that we are going to go ahead and announce the August 17th piece to the community, probably starting tomorrow.
And if it's okay, I would like to send this now to the calendar committee so that they have an opportunity to have some input as well. I don't want it to be something that, because that has been a bit of an issue in the past, that there wasn't enough input from the community, from the general population of teachers. So I want to get that out to them tomorrow if that's possible and okay.
Will this allow us now to end the semester before Christmas break, or?
No, I tried very hard to do that. What I ended up having to do is juggle so that the first quarter ends with 47 days, the second quarter ends with 47 days, and that only gives the high school 5 days, Ms. Davis, 5 days to prepare for exams, because exams will start, I think it's the 11th of January and run to the end of that week. So, and otherwise, they would have had to start, if I had left it at equal quarters, they would have had to start exams 2 days after returning from Christmas break. And we can't do that.
Is it feasible to add any more virtual learning days so that we didn't have to include any extra hours like that?
No, it's mandated that 5 of them are face to face.
Right.
I know, but could we implement more above those 5 so that we didn't have to
The problem is you have to stay within the 215 days for teachers. Now, we could add, but the only way you could add is by taking away some of
Face to
their
face.
work days and that sort of thing.
Or by taking away, or are you talking about taking away face to face days and turning them into remote days?
I don't know if there's been much guidance on that.
It hasn't.
No, and the other piece is that as great a job as our teachers have done, the quality of instruction is just not the same.
I'm thinking we regular, just general scheduled days and making them remote.
I mean, I'm just curious, instead of having, I mean, like you were saying about thinking of other days, it makes total sense, but if we're still building in extra hours, correct?
Yes, we are.
So I'm just saying, instead of building those extra hours for inclement weather days, if we had inclement weather days, we said, okay, now these inclement weather days are virtual learning days anyway. It's really confusing.
Oh, then why go so far above the 1,025?
As a past teacher, I can give you my opinion on that. You can't have too many instructional hours.
I agree.
And the kids are gonna be,
So next year.
the kids are really gonna be struggling to recover anyway. And I fear, and this is coming from the student services perspective, I fear that we're gonna have a lot of issues with emotional stuff and mental stuff. Because our kids are, they're resilient and they bounce back, but I still believe there's gonna be a lot of repercussions from this.
And right now, we're all operating still on the assumption that school is going to start back in August, just like normal, whatever that is. And we don't really know that yet. There are a lot of interesting ideas being floated around out there right now.
There's a lot of, we gotta get back to school. I hope.
Yeah, but there, like I said, people are,
Too much damage being done.
yeah.
Well, they're talking about AV days, they're talking about all kinds of different things.
Having secondary students work from home 100% of the time remotely, and then take our elementary schools in districts across the state and move half of them to the middle school facility and half them to the high school facility, so that you're creating more distancing between students and our secondary students are all working from home. There are all kinds of interesting things floating around out there. I have yet to hear any that I support 100%, other than we come back to school in August. I do support that one.
I don't know how you're gonna separate kindergarten kids. You put kindergartners in a room, they're gonna grab one another, I don't care. Try to solve it. So it's what they do.
That, they're just not trying to begin with.
Right.
I mean, there's probably more risk right now to the teachers than there is to the kids.
Yes, absolutely. And you know, everything you read too, and I'm one of the older people, but everything you read is, okay, let's go ahead and let the young teachers come back, but don't let the older ones come back. That would really hurt us in our district.
That's discrimination.
It is age discrimination, you're right. It is,
Or is there something else in, I
yes.
saw from NCSBA about all districts are having to come up or present a remote learning plan
Yes.
for next year?
Yes,
I'm hopeful that our remote learning plan somehow includes actual daily face-to-face. Basically, you're there, I'm in my home, and we're having a normal class, that what we're doing now is not the plan for next year. I'm assuming, I'm asking, I'm hoping, because this
We will
isn't.
pass that information along to our chief academic officer.
I'm in all dead serious. I mean, if a teacher can still get up there from her classroom 6 periods a day and teach. Kids can watch on Zoom, but what's going on now, we can't do for a full another year. No district can, unless they're just magically killing it. It's not sustainable to where kids are gonna get any education next year if we have to continue that.
Well, not every kid has that access either.
That's
Not everybody
right.
has a computer or the internet.
You can't teach algebra by a packet handout. It's just, it's not gonna happen.
Not
That's
to-
something we need to be looking into is the teacher can be in her classroom isolated all to herself and teaching her 3 or 4 or 5 periods a day, zoomed out and same schedule. You know, my child had social studies first and he does it from Zoom, but it's still, we've got to have a more comprehensive, they've done great this year. Please don't knock that or take those as bad comments. It's just this format we're using now, had it happened at the first of the year.
and I think that's why they've asked for a revised, if I understand it correctly, a revised remote learning plan. Because now we have had time to
Right.
build experience into it and see what we can do to modify it to make it more effective. And I think, this is just me and I'm on my way out there, but I think that when you look at what we've done with remote learning, I'm not so sure that the state may not want that built in annually from now on. Because if you think about it, it is a way to really capture the inclement weather things that we have. If the teachers are used to doing the remote learning and the kids are used to receiving it that way, there should not be too many days that you have to make up because of inclement weather.
That's what I was really getting at, really. Not that,
This is a hurricane, and no one has out.
yeah, when you got students, let's say at George Creek, that, I mean, they're the only kids who cannot make it to school
Right,
safely because of flood water.
right,
But you got 95% of the county who can,
right,
to be able to do distance learning with those children,
right.
so we didn't have so many.
Gotcha. Gotcha.
I'm with them. They're like, you're just talking street now. I'm like, yeah, I'm with you now. I'm tracking 100%. That was weird.
I probably said, I know I said very.
I'm sorry.
No, I understand what you're saying, and I agree, because the county is, it's long and narrow, and what happens at the very end and up in South Mills doesn't necessarily happen in the middle.
Most of the day, they just, or Matthew, who's not necessarily because the power was all that flooding and stuff.
Correct.
And just for the record, you're not on the way out the door. Put that in your notes, John.
It's not allowed to say.
Not anytime soon.
Yeah, yeah, that's not, that's, no, ma'am. No.
I've heard of students from other districts or other teachers who have stated that they have had zero contact with some of their students. Do we have any of those instances?
I can only say that I've talked to one teacher at length about it, and she said she contacted every single student and every day had contact with every single student in her class. But she's got that kind of personality.
Yeah, and
She's like a dog with a bone.
We've had every student contacted at both high schools. Some have been harder, you know, some we've contacted more than others, but there has been contact from administration and staff. for every student.
And my understanding from, I know that Ms. Robinson, Mr. Mazzell are not here tonight, but my understanding is they're having a pretty high success rate as well. When I reached out to them a few weeks ago to ask that question. You know, as Ms. Davis said, some are more difficult to reach than others, but they're having somewhat regular contact. Yeah.
I think most of the teachers in this county have really put a lot of effort into making sure that their kids are going to be okay.
And thank you. And the only other thing in reference to calendar is we are not going to end the school year early. That is absolutely not allowed. Although some folks have taken that step and then had to step back. But we are, just as a reminder to you, the last couple of weeks in a middle school and elementary school would be spent doing exams. And in a high school, the last 2 weeks, 1 week would be spent on sort of review, and then the last week on exams. We are going to back instruction down those last 2 weeks and go ahead and give the teachers and students a little extra time to wrap some things up, get some devices collected, get work collected, grading done, those kinds of things. And so we're looking at May 29th as that date where we will officially end new instruction is what we will do. But there will still be interaction, there will still be that kind of thing. And I'm gonna, I wanted to inform the board about it first, and then we're gonna meet and talk with principals about it and get some communication out to families. You know, some people have said, well, do you think families are gonna complain about that? And I said, no, I think they're gonna celebrate. So, because I think parents have had enough of being teachers. And so we're gonna start working on getting a plan out for that. Ms. Davis has already worked with the early college because they're already less than 2 weeks. So we've already worked ahead of time with them, but just know that that's coming and we're gonna communicate that out. But again, not ending the school year early, just no new instruction after May 29th. And then the teachers will work with students and families to wrap things up for the year.
The kids going from 8th into high school, they're, I know we're using March 13th as their letter grade date. Is that gonna be what applies for the honors or academic, you know, the, like to get into?
For registration purposes?
Yes, yeah, for the ones that would qualify for like honors, life science or whatever, because they had a grade above.
Yes, sir.
Since there's no EOC or EOG test.
Yes, sir. That's what we're looking at, is we're looking at grades. And we actually, it's recommended is what is usually, the only requirements we can have for registration for classes are like level 1 to level 2. So when we do grades, we do recommendations. So that wouldn't hold a kid back even if they wanted to and didn't have that certain grade. But those are the things we're going to look at. I have talked to Mr. Mazzell and Christy Thomas, the guidance counselor at the middle school, to start getting some of that information, because typically we do look at, you know, the EOG scores for that. So,
Thank you.
Mm-hmm.
All right, thank you for that presentation. More to come. Monthly financial update is in the board pack. Does anybody have any questions? Do you have one?
No.
See you, none.
Council.
Action agenda, item A, we've already approved. Dr. Farrell, the Board of Education, discussion of meeting to interview closeout.
So this is a date that you all have to set every year. We want to give our finance department the maximum amount of time. Ms. Northley has requested the week of June 22nd and as late in the week as we can do, or as you all can do. And so if you could select a date that week. And as always, I will make myself available.
I will be out of town that whole week, but I think y'all can budget for that.
What week did you say now? I'm sorry.
The week of June 22nd. Did I say May 22nd?
If Florida's not reopened by
June
June.
22nd.
I can do any. What works for you guys? What about you?
Right now, I'm moving any day.
Twenty-fourth, twenty-fifth.
Okay, wanna do the 24th?
Maybe the 25th. Because I know not being able to take that trip, yeah, on the 25th, I know I'm off.
Okay.
June 25th.
If you don't mind.
No, no,
June 25th.
what time, 6?
6.
Five.
5? Can you come there at 5?
I can be there.
Thanks.
On Thursday.
Oh, that's right. Thursday, early. How about 5? Can we do 5? Can you do 5?
6, June 25th at 5 p.m.
Yeah, right.
I can do earlier than that.
At the central office,
Yeah, we could,
bring me some coffee.
yeah, we could do that.
Yeah.
Social distance as best we can.
Places you can get.
June 25th, 5:00. Central office. No,
Yeah, so we,
all right. Motion by Mr. Heath that we have a call meeting on June 25th, 5 p.m. at the central office. And seconded by Mr. Heath.
So,
Okay,
Just that you can make one yourself.
Mr. Purcell made second. Any discussion? All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, motion carries. Check and see if y'all pay attention. Dr. Farrell for, proposal of the 2021 Board of Education meeting calendar.
That was in your packet, for consideration. There, usually our meetings are on the second Thursday in the month. There were a couple of calendar conflicts this time. So those are the dates that I'm proposing to you for the, board meeting schedule, for the 2021 school year.
Mr. Lady,
Yes, sir.
does it matter that we changed it to the third Thursday in our policy? We do the second and fourth Thursday?
It does not, it does not change that, or I'm sorry, it doesn't change the fact that it would still be a regular board meeting as long as it's on the calendar that you adopt and it's published at least 7 days in advance of the meeting. Then it would still be a regular meeting.
The fourth Thursday, better.
For those two that are marked as the third Thursday,
That was for the July one, I couldn't tell you April, I'm sure that's.
I can say.
July 23.
You said there was conflicts with July and October
conflicts or
and April. Conflicts meaning
I'm not seeing what the conflict is in July. I think it's October, I have to be away.
I thought July was,
Sounds perfect.
Oh, okay.
That's my favorite birthday.
Because it should have been on July 9th, right? No, that's July, unless I give you the wrong dates, that's the July 4th week. Going into the week after July 4th.
that changed.
Yeah, that's what I'm looking at. Moving it to the 4th Thursday in July would work,
23rd.
instead of the 3rd Thursday.
that work for everybody?
That would be July 30th, is that right?
That's 23rd.
July 23rd, sorry.
That's
July, Thursdays in July.
Right.
COA graduation's already.
They've actually moved it.
Again,
Yeah, I sent y'all an email today, it's like late this afternoon. They're doing a drive-through graduation in May.
the 30th was my anniversary.
And then in April, Easter.
I'm away on July 9th. What was it?
April 15, because of the spring break. It's moved day.
You were exactly right. I was thinking the 16th. and looking at the 9th on the calendar. You're right.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right. So, but we're
It's got-
changing
it has
that one
got
to the 23rd.
So we're moving that to, we are moving the July meeting to the 23rd. Is that right?
That work?
And then what about the others?
Good for me.
There's April 15th, spring break.
April 15th, I believe, is spring break. Yes.
October 15th was the other. It's October.
That's the one that I have a calendar conflict. I have two this year.
So you won't be on the
That's right.
8th.
The May 28th is at 6 PM, the joint meeting. The location we're still working on.
I guess we'll go back. Is everybody good with the calendar as presented?
So July 23rd was the only change,
Except the July meeting will be on July 23rd.
and then everything else is as presented.
Who's that yelling first?
Me.
Okay. So motion by Mr. Purcell that we approve the 2021 Board of Education meeting calendar as presented, with the exception of the July meeting will be July 23rd. Seconded by Ms. Adams. Any further discussion? All in favor, say aye. Aye. Opposed? Motion carries. Mr. Lawrence to discuss the custodial services bids.
In your package, I believe you had a custodian service proposal summary. Dr. Farrell, the TAC committee, our custodians, myself, met with the three people that bid on this contract. Had a series of questions that we have, just a general, greet and meet, see how we liked and everything, and it was all done. We checked the references and everything. I think the consensus was to go with ABM custodial services for the school. And I'd like to recommend or ask that we approve them to take over the custodial work at the schools.
And all their references, everything checked out good.
Yes, sir.
I mean, I'm just basing the difference in that contract pricing, making sure everything.
ABM is actually, you're talking about because it's lower.
Substantially.
It's a couple $1,000s lower than what we currently have, but it is substantial. We kind of think that the American Facility Services might have been substantially high.
Yes.
Yeah. But yes, the references checked out there. It's in North Carolina counties, and I'll reach out to those superintendents myself to say, hey, tell me about these guys. How's it going? What are the complaints that you get? When you get complaints, how are they resolved? Well, first, are they resolved? And second, how are they resolved? if I were to call teachers in each building and ask them, what would they tell me about them? Because that's the tough part right there.
Yes, it is.
So, and of course, this is a change from service master, so it would be a transition plan and all of that.
And these contracts are July 1.
Yes. And I believe they are written, correct me if I'm wrong, Larry, they are written as 4-year contract, but approved by the board with an year-to-year extension.
That's correct.
So if the board is unhappy with it in a year, you have the option to not extend it for the next year.
Make a motion to approve ABM for the contract.
You recommend, that's not a
Oh, I thought you already recommended it, sorry.
That's all right.
Wait a second.
So we have a motion by Mr. Purcell that we accept the superintendent's recommendation for ABL as custodial services for a 1-year contract, renewable 3 additional years.
That's correct. We would put it back up.
Seconded by Ms. Abbott. Is there any further discussion? All in favor say aye. Opposed? Motion carries.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Larry Mark.
Thank you.
Ms. Lane, you're back up.
Yay.
She's going to discuss our Camden County School student accident insurance coverage.
Okay, for several years, Camden County Schools have been very satisfied with American Advantage Marketing Group for providing our student accident and health, accident and athletic insurance program. Each year, we review submissions sent to us from various companies, and American Advantage has consistently been the company that offers the highest quality service. The plans are backed by nationwide insurance and serviced by K&K Insurance Group. American Advantage is endorsed by the North Carolina Athletic Directors Association and the North Carolina High School Athletic Association. Camden uses only the volunteer insurance program. That's it. We don't do anything else. Forms are given to the students at the beginning of each school year, and parents can then enroll online. To my knowledge, the company has continued to provide outstanding service to our students and to the parents. So this is a company we've been with for years, and they've always provided good service.
So my recommendation is that you approve the student accident insurance as presented by Ms. Lake.
Motion by Ms. Abbott to accept the superintendent's recommendation to accept the student accident insurance coverage as presented by Ms. Lake. Seconded by Mr. Heath. Is there any further discussion? All in favor say aye. Opposed? Motion carries. Thank you.
Thank you.
Dr. Farrell, superintendent's recommendation on closed session.
My recommendation is that you approve the personnel action report for May 14th, 2020 as presented by Mr. Baird in closed session.
Motion by Mr. Heath that we accept the superintendent's recommendation for personnel as presented by Mr. Baird in closed session. Seconded by Dr. Banks. Is there any further discussion? All in favor say aye. Opposed? Motion carries. Announcements, as far as we know, North Carolina School Board Association will still have their annual conference, November 5th through November 7th. May 16th, there'll be a senior parade starting at 11 a.m., which will go from the high school through Novelty Drive.
Yes, sir.
Yes. May 28th is our confirmed date for a joint meeting with the county commissioners. Time and place to be determined.
The 6 p.m. It is set for 6 p.m.
Set for 6
location.
p.m. Location to be determined. June the 6th is Camden Early College High School graduation. I'm going to read this is an all-day event beginning at 10 a.m. until early evening. Regular June board meeting scheduled for Board of Education 6:30 at closed session at the Here at the media center.
Yes.
June 12th and June 13th, Camden County High School graduation. And this will be two all-day events, starting at 10 a.m.
Jane, yes, sir.
Both of them start again.
Yes, that is.
10 a.m. start time.
And you're gonna send out some additional information for what you'd like for us.
Yes, sir. Yeah, yes, sir. We're working on that. Yeah, I know it's long days. So we're gonna have a section for you, where you're away from you can't be part of the 10 people right now unless the governor's orders change. So that we will have a section if you guys can come for any of them or a period of time or things like that. And we're also releasing next week the schedule of the exact date and times for each graduate. So that'll go out next week as well.
Thank you. June 25th at 5 o'clock, there is a call meeting of the Board of Education to be held at the central office at 5 p.m. I have no further announcements. Does anyone have any other business or future agenda items to be presented before this board? Motion to adjourn. Motion by Ms. Idlet to adjourn. Seconded by Mr. Purcell. All in favor say aye. Opposed? Motion carries. We are adjourned.